Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is the second video of the Pokemon Go Battle League 101 series. Today we'll be looking at basically these 5 things in this video. Okay, so this video will be at least 10 minutes. I will be talking about a lot more on Pokemon knowledge. Before you get started into Go Battle League, you need to make sure that your Pokemon knowledge is sufficient enough to play properly. Okay, sufficient meaning you as a user, you need to know the advantages and disadvantages of certain Pokemon into certain matchups. Okay, if you don't know these things, it's very hard for you to fight in Go Battle League as well. Anyway, so yeah, Pokemon knowledge is the most important thing that you need to know for a first time beginner. Okay, let's start off with the typing knowledge. Okay, so I'm going to be flashing an image here. This may look very complicated, but I'm going to break it down into what it actually is. Okay. Okay, so yeah, so what you see here, okay, let's look at this image very carefully. Okay, so basically plus just means 2 times effectiveness. So if you take an example, water is 2 times effective to ground, water is 2 times effective to fire, water is 2 times effective to rock. Okay, that means that if you are a rock Pokemon and you take a water move in like a general rock Pokemon, you take a water move, you'll probably take a lot of damage. Okay, it's also a situation where the rock Pokemon will be knocked out by the water move as well. So that's what it means by the plus symbol here. Minus symbol just basically means resistance. So for example, fire is resisted by water. Okay, this is quite common sense because water beats fire, so fire gets resisted by water. Water also resists itself. That means if you fire a water move onto a water Pokemon, it probably is resisted. If you fire a water move onto a grass Pokemon, it's also resisted. Okay, so these minuses are just examples of resistance. Now, actually what is more important is the minuses in the Go Battle League, because you need to know what Pokemon you can bring in against your opponent, such that you can gain advantages in your battles. Okay, these advantages I will be speaking more on them in a later video, but first do take note that although weakness is important, I do agree weakness is very important, but resistance is also equally important. Okay, and if you take a look at the black color symbols, black just basically means double resisted. Okay, in Pokemon Go there's no such thing as totally damage proof. That means unlike the main series games, if you fire an electric move onto like, let's say, a ground Pokemon, it's totally 0 damage. If you fire a normal move onto a ghost Pokemon, it's also 0 damage. But no, in this game, there is still damage, just very little. So the X basically means 4 times resisted, or like totally resisted. Okay, so if you fire an electric move into a ground type, you probably do very insignificant damage onto whatever ground Pokemon there is you're firing on. Okay, same thing for normal versus ghost, same thing for fighting versus ghost, ground versus flying. Yeah, all these I think makes common sense, right? If you are flying, you cannot get affected by ground. Poison into steel, you're also 4 times resisted. Okay, dragon into fairy, equally the same, 4 times resisted. And goes into normal. So ghost and normal are basically double resist each other. Okay, certain things we might want to know. What we call self-inflicting types are like dragon and ghost. So dragon, if you notice here, dragon defeats dragon. So dragon is its own weakness basically. Same thing as ghost. So if you have a Pokemon like Giratina, you're basically weak against yourself. Yeah. Okay. Other points to note, maybe, okay, if you take a look at what are the common strong typings. Okay, we will look at what are the typings that can defeat a lot of things. So fighting is one of them. Fighting can defeat normal, can defeat ice, can defeat rock, dark, and steel. So there's actually 5 typings that fighting can defeat. Okay, however, it's also prone to a lot of weaknesses. It's prone to bug. Sorry, it's also prone to a lot of weaknesses like this way. So like flying, psychic, and fairy. It's three typings. Okay, why I say a lot is because there's a lot of meta Pokemon that are in this range of flying, psychic, and fairy. Okay, I'll talk more into that in the later part of this video. Another good typing is probably water. Okay, if you notice water, there's actually a lot of resistance as well. Water is resistant to steel, resistant to ice, resisted against itself, and it resists fire as well. Okay, the other good typing actually is also steel. If you take a look at steel, although it doesn't have a lot of so-called weak typings, that means it doesn't counter a lot of things. It does not counter like a lot of typings. It only counters like ice, rock, and fairy, but it has tons of resistance. So it resists normal, it resists grass, it resists ice, it resists flying, it resists psychic, bug, rock, ghost, dragon, dark, itself, steel, and fairy. So this whole chart, there's only like maybe 2 things that they can defeat. Three typings that can defeat steel, which is ground, fighting, and fire. Okay, so steel is also one of the good typings, but this typing chart doesn't determine the meta, because the Pokemon Go meta is also determined by its fast move and charge moves, which I will talk about this later in a later video. Okay, for now, let's move on to the next point, which I'm trying to talk about. Okay, so we've been talking about typing knowledge and resistance and weaknesses. Okay, so this is where we are at. The next thing we are going to talk about is typing combinations. Now, I'm going to put out an image. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, so yeah, this is an image I'm going to be borrowing from another streamer called PvP Steve. Okay, this is actually an image which is for the color cup coming in 8 January. Okay, but I'm gonna showcase certain typings here, which is very common for strong meta Pokemon. Okay, so for example, at the bottom here we can see these typings, these water Pokemon. These are called mud boys. What are mud boys basically? Basically, these are ground and water type Pokemon. Okay, why they are strong? Because they cover all weaknesses except for grass. So grass is double effective on these Pokemon. So if you fire a grass move, they probably will take a knockout. But what I want to focus on is that these few Pokemon are very strong into almost anything except for grass. Okay, so if you have a Pokemon that does not have a grass move, any of these Pokemon do quite well into whatever you're facing. Okay, another typing that is good is poison. Poison combined with okay, so I do have a note here. These are the common good typings. Okay, besides the image that I've shown. Okay, so we've talked about ground and water. Another good typing combination is poison and dark. Okay, the reason for that is also very simple. Both of these typings cover each other. So if you're poison, you basically resist. Okay, we go back to the chart, right? Okay, you see poison, you basically are neutral on bug, and if you're poison, you're also neutral. You're also neutral to fighting. Yeah. So what this means is that when the typings are combined, okay, they only have weaknesses that are very obviously um, weaknesses. So for example, if poison and dark, the only weakness is actually only ground type. Okay, because ground beats poison 2 times. That's the only weakness. So certain examples are like Galarian Snowbro. Another example would be Drapion, which is one of the top metas in the Open Great League. Okay, um, and then we move on to the common good typings, which is I've mentioned before. Steel. Anything with steel, you are basically resisted to almost everything. Okay, flying. So flying, you resist ground and you resist fighting, which these two are quite common in a lot of Pokemon, especially if we talk about earlier we talked about the mud boys, right? So if you have a flying, you basically resist the mud boys. Okay, water. Okay, water is actually a very strong typing because it's most of the Pokemon that is water is very bulky. Okay, so water is a very bulky typing in general. Um, and then also we have normal, which is also one of the more bulky types. So water and normal, these two are the so-called bulky Pokemon. Um, do take note that normal can be anything on the ground that is very common. So for example, Rattata, Alolan Raticate is one of the stronger Pokemon in the Go Battle League as well. So don't just throw your Pokemon away just because they seem like common Pokemon. Okay, in the Go Battle League, almost everything can be used because as time goes by, as the season changes, there will be move sets being edited and added to different Pokemon. So these typings, sorry, normal typing Pokemon are very flexible. Okay, um, okay, we move on to the yep. So we have the common strong typing combos, and finally we move on to the Pokemon meta. Okay, for this I need to show. Yeah, I'm gonna show the screen. Okay, so before I show this screen, I'm gonna go into PvP Poke. Now, what you guys are seeing right now is a website called PvP Poke. Now, PvP Poke is the official website where basically the developers calculate the different move damages, move typings, fast moves, charge moves, type Pokemon typings according to the current meta. Current meta meaning that according to whatever stat changes there are in the different Pokemon moves, which Pokemon is the best to use, like overall. Okay, so you can play around with this setting. This is basically just go to pvppoke.com. You go to rankings and you go to Great League. Okay, for this series I'll be focusing on the Great League. So as you watch my videos, you'll understand more why PvP Poke is so useful. Okay, here you can see the top number 1 is Clodsire. Now, Clodsire, why is it so good? Because of its overall stat product. Okay, the stat product is basically a combination of all the different stats combined together. There is actually a formula for that. So because its stat product is so huge, 2352, okay, compared to the rest of the Pokemon, let's say if you take something like let's say Chestnut, okay, its stat product is only 1868. Okay, so the reason why its Clodsire is top meta is because the stat product is just so high. Okay, what makes this stat product so good is because its HP and defense is ridiculously over the charts. Okay, so Clodsire in a sense is a very tanky Pokemon. Okay, it can resist almost any charge move. So far I have not seen any charge attack that can one hit KO Clodsire when Clodsire is at full HP. Okay, so that's the reason why Clodsire is basically the top of this league. Okay, so also for new players, you can basically study this list. What is good about Pokemon knowledge is that when you do have this knowledge, you know your typing matchups. For example, if you face, let's say, a Primate what can you do, or what can you throw in so that you don't get super effective karate chop damage or like close combat damage. So you can basically throw in Cloudzyre. Okay, so Cloudzyre, it resists Primate because it's neutral to fighting type is neutral to Cloudzyre, and then yeah, you probably are able to take both of his fast move and charge moves quite easily. Okay, so this is the reason why Pokemon typing is very important. Okay, so head on to my next video to see the next topic. For now, that is all for Pokemon typing. For beginners, do make sure you learn to use PvP poke as a tool for as you take PvP poke along your journey. Do learn more about the typings. Okay, one thing I can add is that for people who are unfamiliar, okay, there's this type called Fairy. Fairy actually has one. Okay, this chart is not updated, but Fairy actually has a fire resistance. Okay, so Fairy is actually resisted by fire. This chart doesn't say everything, but for example, yeah, Fairy is resisted by fire. I think the other thing that is missing, I'm starting to see, is that oh yes, fighting is resisted to poison. Yeah, Fairy is resisted. Ah, there we go. Yeah, okay, it's here. So it's not missing. So Fairy is resisted by fire. So if you take, for example, Wigglytuff has Charm as its fast move. One of the good so-called resisted Pokemon that is so-called confused is Incineroar. Incineroar is fire and dark. Dark, if you can see, is actually weak to Fairy. Fairy against dark here is actually weak, but if you combine it with fire, it's basically neutral. Okay, so Incineroar takes neutral damage from Wigglytuff, or neutral Fairy damage. Another example would be Turtonator. Turtonator is dragon and fire. Fire resists Fairy, dragon is weak against Fairy, so it actually takes neutral damage to Fairy. Okay, so these are some of the special combinations that I like to mention. Okay, and for the rest, you can take a look at my next video, and I will see you guys soon.